April. It's the middle of November, and so you know what that means. Mid-month wrap-up. And for the first 2 weeks of this month, I have been reading constantly. It's been this weird mix of old books and new books, and 13 books, guys. 13 books. The first book I picked up was Afterworld by Scott Westerfeld. This is a story about Darcy, who is a 17, 18-year-old girl who decides to skip college and just pursue a career in writing because she already got a book deal for one of her stories. So on a whim, she goes off to New York and tries to do this author thing. At the same time, we get to read her book, which is Afterworld, which is about psychopomps, which of course I love. I love when people can talk to dead people and the whole shepherding of dead souls. I was sold on the synopsis of this book. However, upon reading this book, I was more drawn to Darcy's story, Afterworld, than I was to Darcy's actual story. There was just something missing in that storyline for me that I really didn't care what happened to Darcy. I love authors, and it's interesting to see their creative process and how things happen and develop, especially in storylines. So overall, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Then I decided to continue my journey with the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy trilogy with book 4 and 5 of the trilogy, which is So Long and Thanks for All the Fish and Mostly Harmless. Douglas Adams went on the same vein of the stories that he started out with the original trilogy, and I really liked So Long and Thanks for All the Fish because of some of the characters that he added into the story and the whole flying concept. But then when you got Mostly Harmless and you ripped a lot of that away and you went on this like weird trajectory, I didn't, and it was a letdown, which means I'm probably not going to pick up the 6th book in the trilogy, which isn't even written by Douglas Adams. I gave So Long and Thanks for All the Fish a 4 out of 5 stars and Mostly Harmless 3 out of 5. Then there was The Madman's Daughter by Megan Shepherd. This is a story about Juliet, who lives in London and whose father kind of fled the city after some of his medical practices were questioned. This happened when she was very young, and so she was surviving in London with just her mother, and then her mother passed away, and she's struggling just to survive when she gets news that her father might not be dead. He might be on this island in the middle of nowhere. So she goes on this great adventure to find her father. The great thing about this series is that it pays homage to a lot of the old monster stories. You get the Frankensteins, and you get all those, the Dracula, the werewolves, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. It's got that feel, which I absolutely love. So it was a little eerie, it was a little creepy. I wasn't that excited about the love story that was kind of tied up into all of this, but I really love the old monster feel, and so I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars, and I definitely will be continuing on with this series because it's got my heart right now. It's got my little monster heart. I also picked up the next in the Diviner series, which is Lair of Dreams by Libba Bray. I was so excited to get my hands on one of these copies finally that I don't have words. I don't have words. I love Libba Bray's writing. So Lair of Dreams continues on the Diviner storyline in the 1920s New York. All of these diviners seem to start popping up, and then there's this whole underlying story of what this means, why all of these powers are coming about now, and Libba Bray adds in a few more characters into the storyline, and I absolutely, there was a moment during this read where I started freaking out. Some people saw it on Twitter as it was happening, but there was a slight Gemma Doyle reference in the book. I don't know if it was intentional or if I was reading more into it. If you read this book, let me know what you think. But even if it wasn't intentional and it really wasn't a thing, I loved it. I loved it, guys. So if you like the Great and Terrible Beauty series, you really need to pick up the Diviner series. This book right here, Persuasion by Martina Bone. Heir of Watson Island series. This book just came out and I picked it up immediately and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. This series centers around Barry, who after the death of her mother finds out that her mother had a family that she didn't know about, and so she goes and lives with her unknown aunt on Watson Island. It's this Southern Gothic book that involves all kinds of mythos. I don't know how to tell you about this book without spoiling the first book, but this continues Barry's journey as she's getting to know what curses and magic and everything else is rolled into her mother's hometown and the estate in which she now lives. You get to know a little bit more about her cousins and the love interest 8, who sounds wonderful. The only thing with this book is there's a little bit of angst in this book, and the whole time I'm just screaming at them to communicate and not to be hypocritical because they keep getting mad at each other for the same stupid stuff. But if you like the Southern Gothic supernatural romance kind of read, this series is for you. It is. I don't know where you guys have been if you have not seen my rant about Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This book took over my life for a 12-hour period and just wouldn't let me go. This is a space survival odyssey catastrophe book that is in file format that is just amazing. I will link to my rant, rave, review thing up above and all around so you can go watch it where I can explain more to you about it. The format of the book and the storyline of the book was absolutely amazing and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And then the epic reads of the month had to come to an end when I read this book. The Crimson Thread by Suzanne Wen. This is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. It is about a young girl, Birdie, who's Irish, who moves to New York with her family and becomes a seamstress for this extremely wealthy family. Just by the fact that it is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, you can probably guess a lot of what goes on in this story. I had a hard time believing a lot of the characters and the timeline and a lot of things in this book. It felt, it was off. And so I only gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. And what is a reading month if you don't pick up at least one nonfiction book, am I right? So I read The Lone Survivor by Marcus Literal and Patrick Robinson. This is an eyewitness account of the Operation Red Wing and the lost heroes of SEAL Team 10. This is part of the Bin Laden era of the war in which Marcus's team went down and Marcus had to find a way to survive and get back to the States, and this is his story. I do like reading these kind of memoirish kind of books. The only issue I had with this book is at points there's preachy moments that feel unnecessary because the story can speak for itself. You don't need to just keep picking. And so that was the only thing I had against this book. And overall, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I finally finished the Aragon series. I don't even know what the real series title is, but this series, I picked up Inheritance and finally read it all the way through. I've tried to read this multiple times and I just get distracted. That's me. I really loved Aragon, and then the series just kind of started slipping for me. I probably waited too long to read this one. It didn't hold my interest like it could have. However, I will always love Saphira. She is one of my favorite dragons of all time, which I guess is saying something. But in the end, I could only give this a 3 out of 5 stars. And then there was a classic, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is just one of those junior classic editions, so it isn't the full thing. It's a bunch of his short stories that kicked off Sherlock Holmes. I had never read a Sherlock Holmes story, so I wanted to get a feel for what really started all of it, and I'm really glad I did. I gave them all 4 out of 5 stars. It's interesting to see the Sherlock character now that we've been inundated with a lot of Sherlock's detective style, especially in a lot of the dramas on TV. So it wasn't really earth-shattering in any way, but it was still good and I enjoyed it. I'm probably going to be seeing this book in a lot of people's wrap-up for this month because it's a thing. And that, of course, is Winter by Marissa Meyer. I wasn't going to pick up this book until Wednesday, but then I started seeing everything on all of the social medias, and I had to pick it up on Tuesday. I tried to savor this read as much as I can because I knew as soon as it was finished, I would just, I didn't want to say goodbye to the characters, but I wanted to read it at the same time. It just, Marissa Meyer, the things you do to my poor little soul. This is the final book of the Lunar Chronicles series, which started out with Cinder, the cyborg Cinderella, moved on to Scarlet, the Parisian Red Riding Hood, then Crest, who is an alien stuck in a satellite, and then finally Winter, who is a half crazy Snow White. I just love the way that Marissa Meyer ties sci-fi and fairy tales into this series. It was wonderful. I was not disappointed in this book at all. It was a 5 out of 5. It was. I want to give more words than I just did. I'm probably going to do a video that covers the whole Lunar Chronicles series and all of the little shorts that Marissa Meyer has written, because it needs to happen. So look forward to that. And then finally, for this first half of the month, I read Doll Bones by Holly Black. This is a middle grade read about Zach, Poppy, and Alice, who are 12-year-olds who like to invent worlds and play out stories and all that kind of stuff that I used to love growing up. However, Zach's father wants him to grow up and devastatingly throws out all of Zach's toys. This starts a bit of drama in the group, which then in turn leads to this quest to bury a haunted porcelain doll in the hometown of which they believe the girl originally lived in. So 3 12-year-olds go off into the middle of who knows where to bury a doll. The greatest thing about this whole story is you questioning whether or not this doll is actually haunted. It is so creepy and I loved it. However, there were some times I questioned whether or not these were actually 12-year-olds, because sometimes they don't feel like 12-year-olds, they feel a little older than that. Holly Black did it again. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So that has been my reading month so far. I'm gonna guess that this isn't gonna hold because the next 2 weeks of my life are going to be ridiculous. So if you don't see my face for a while, that is probably why. I love the reading that I am doing, and I hope you are too. And I heart your beautiful faces. Bye. I'm so excited about my hair right now. Isn't it pretty? Oh my gosh. Ah! Okay, that was totally random.